There is something you rarely hear people admit out loud. You can genuinely care about someone, enjoy spending time with them, and still not miss them when they're gone. Maybe you've noticed this about yourself. A friend goes on holiday. A family member moves away. Someone you love isn't around for a few days. And while everyone else seems to talk about how much they miss people, you feel fine. Not because you don't care. Not because you're cold. And not because there's something wrong with you. In fact, you might even feel guilty about it. You wonder why you seem different from other people, why you don't crave constant contact, why being alone often feels more natural than being surrounded by others, why distance sometimes feels peaceful instead of painful. The truth is that many sensitive, emotionally exhausted people experience relationships very differently than they have been taught to. And once you understand why, you may stop seeing this part of yourself as a flaw. In this video, we'll explore the hidden reason you don't miss people the way others do, why solitude feels so important to you, and why this may have far less to do with love than you think. Most people assume that missing someone is the ultimate proof of love. If you miss them, you care. If you don't miss them, something must be wrong. But real life is rarely that simple. Think about the people who matter most to you. The chances are that you don't spend every waking moment thinking about them. You don't constantly need reassurance that they're still there. You don't need endless messages throughout the day. And when they leave for a while, your world doesn't suddenly fall apart. For many sensitive people, love is not experienced through constant longing. It is experienced through trust. When someone feels emotionally safe to you, your nervous system doesn't feel the need to keep checking for them. You don't need to hold on to them mentally because deep down, you already know the connection exists. Ironically, people who experience intense separation anxiety often think about others more, miss them more, and feel more distressed when they're apart. Not because they love more, but because their nervous system struggles to feel secure. A secure connection often feels much quieter, less dramatic, less obsessive, and from the outside, it can even look like indifference. This is why many sensitive people become confused. They compare their inner experience to what they see in movies, social media, or even in the people around them. They expect themselves to constantly miss their partner, their friends, or their family. And when that doesn't happen, they start questioning themselves. Maybe I don't care enough. Maybe I'm selfish. Maybe I'm emotionally distant. But often the reality is much simpler. You don't spend all your energy holding on to people because a part of you already trusts that they are still there. And trust feels very different from longing. But there is another reason why you may not miss people the way others do. And this reason has nothing to do with how much you love them. Many sensitive people experience social interaction differently than the average person. Even enjoyable conversations require energy. Even being around people you genuinely like requires energy. Listening, empathizing, reading emotions, adapting to different personalities, staying engaged in conversations. Your mind is processing far more than most people realize. Because of this, being alone doesn't feel empty. It feels restorative. It feels like finally putting down a heavy backpack you didn't realize you were carrying. This is why some people feel confused when they notice a sense of relief after social events, family gatherings, or even time spent with people they care about deeply. The relief is not about escaping the people. It is about recovering your energy. But many sensitive people misinterpret this feeling. They think, if I really loved these people, I wouldn't need so much space. The opposite is often true. Healthy relationships allow room for both connection and recovery. You can enjoy someone's presence and still look forward to being alone afterward. You can love your friends and still prefer a quiet evening at home. You can miss the connection without missing the constant stimulation. Unfortunately, we live in a culture that often treats social needs as if they should be the same for everyone. The people who always want company are considered normal. The people who need more solitude often feel like they have to explain themselves. Over time, this can create a deep sense of shame. You begin forcing yourself into social situations that leave you exhausted. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay longer than you want to stay. And eventually, being around people starts to feel less enjoyable because you're constantly ignoring your own limits. What if needing space is not a problem to fix? What if it's simply the way your nervous system functions best? That possibility changes everything. The guilt often begins long before adulthood. Many sensitive people grow up receiving the message that wanting space is somehow wrong. Maybe you were encouraged to be more social. Maybe people told you that you spent too much time alone. Maybe you were made to feel selfish when you wanted to leave a gathering early, stay home instead of going out, or simply have time to yourself. Over time, you learn to distrust your own needs. Instead of asking yourself what feels right, you start asking what other people expect from you. And that's where the guilt begins. You start believing that a good friend should always be available. A good partner should always want to spend more time together. A good family member should always enjoy family gatherings. So when you find yourself craving solitude, part of you immediately feels uncomfortable. You question yourself. You judge yourself. You wonder whether you're becoming distant, cold, or disconnected. But what if the guilt isn't coming from your need for space? What if it's coming from the belief that your need for space is wrong? Those are two very different things. Think about it for a moment. When you finally get a quiet evening alone, how do you usually feel? For many sensitive people, the answer is not loneliness. It's relief. Their body relaxes. Their mind becomes quieter. The pressure disappears. They can finally hear their own thoughts again. That feeling is important because relief is often information. It tells you that something your nervous system needed has finally been received. Yet many people immediately ruin that moment by judging themselves for it. Instead of enjoying the peace, they think, "What's wrong with me?" But perhaps the better question is this: what if nothing is wrong with you at all? What if you've simply spent years comparing yourself to people who need different things than you do? The moment you stop treating your need for solitude as a flaw, something begins to change. You stop fighting yourself. You stop forcing connections that leave you drained. And for the first time, you begin building relationships that actually respect who you are. Perhaps the biggest misunderstanding of all is the belief that love must always feel like missing. That if someone matters to you, you should constantly think about them when they're not there. But for many sensitive people, love often takes a much quieter form. You think of someone when something meaningful happens. You care about their well-being. You enjoy sharing moments with them. You are there when they truly need you. But when they leave, you don't feel an overwhelming sense of absence. You simply return to yourself. And there is a difference. Some people carry others with them all day long. Others carry them quietly in their heart. Neither is more loving than the other. They are simply different ways of experiencing connection. The truth is that not missing people all the time does not mean you don't care. Needing space does not mean you are distant. Enjoying solitude does not mean you are broken. In fact, many sensitive people discover that the more they honor their need for space, the more present they become when they are with others. Because connection is no longer something they force. It becomes something they genuinely choose. And there is something beautiful about that. When you stop measuring love by how much you miss someone, you can begin measuring it by something far more meaningful. The quality of your presence, the depth of your care, the honesty of your connection, and perhaps that's why you don't miss people the way others seem to. Not because you love less, but because your love was never meant to be measured by absence. It was always meant to be measured by the quiet certainty that the connection remains, even when nobody is in the room. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to Soul of the Mind for more reflections on sensitivity, emotional exhaustion, and the hidden experiences that many people feel but rarely talk about. And remember, needing space from people is not the opposite of love. Sometimes it's what allows love to breathe. Before you leave, I want you to consider one simple question. Think about the people you love most. If they called you tonight because they needed you, would you be there? If they were struggling, would you care? If something wonderful happened in their life, would you be happy for them? Most likely, the answer is yes. And that's worth remembering, because love is not measured by how often someone crosses your mind. It is measured by what remains in your heart when they do. The world often tells us that the loudest emotions are the deepest ones. But that isn't always true. Sometimes the deepest forms of love are the quietest. They don't demand constant attention. They don't create panic when someone leaves the room. They don't need endless reassurance. They simply remain. Steady, present, and real. So if you've spent years worrying that there's something wrong with you because you enjoy being alone, because you don't miss people the way others seem to, or because you need more space than those around you, maybe it's time to consider a different possibility. Maybe you were never broken. Maybe you were simply built differently. Maybe you were never broken. Maybe you were simply built differently. And perhaps the moment you stop fighting that truth is the moment you begin feeling more at peace with yourself. Not everyone experiences connection in the same way. Not everyone needs the same amount of closeness, the same amount of conversation, or the same amount of time together. Some people feel most alive when they are surrounded by others. Others need periods of quiet to feel like themselves again. Neither is wrong. Neither is better. They are simply different ways of being human. The problem begins when you judge yourself for needing what you need. When you force yourself to become someone else. When you spend years trying to earn a sense of normality that was never meant for you. Real freedom begins when you stop measuring yourself against other people's emotional needs and start listening to your own. When you stop asking, "Why am I not like everyone else?" and start asking, "What helps me feel most like myself?" Because the goal was never to become more social, more available, or more like other people. The goal is to understand yourself, to respect your limits, to honor your need for both connection and solitude, and to build a life that allows room for both. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to Soul of the Mind for more reflections on sensitivity, emotional exhaustion, and the hidden experiences that many people feel but rarely talk about. And remember, needing space does not mean you love less. Sometimes it simply means you need room to hear yourself again. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to Soul of the Mind for more reflections on sensitivity, emotional exhaustion, and the hidden experiences that many people feel but rarely talk about. And remember, the fact that you don't miss people the way others do doesn't mean you care less. The fact that you need space doesn't mean you're distant. And the fact that you enjoy being alone doesn't mean something is wrong with you. Sometimes the people who need the most solitude are the ones who feel the deepest. They simply return to themselves when the world becomes too loud. Maybe you were never meant to be more like everyone else. Maybe your task is to become more fully yourself